The Galactic Council convenes once every solar cycle on Axion Prime, a colossal space station built by civilizations that mastered gravity before humanity discovered fire. Jonah's web represents Earth, which is sort of like being asked to speak for your apartment complex at a meeting of planetary landlords. He sits in section 742, the nosebleed seats reserved for what the Council delicately terms observer species, and what everyone else calls the kids' table. His chair is designed for a species with 3 buttocks. Jonah's has 2. The math doesn't work out comfortably. He's attended 4 of these councils, spoken 0 times. His official job description, as provided by the Human Colonial Authority, reads, "Attend sessions, take notes, represent humanity's interests through dignified presence. Under no circumstances should you actually do anything." Jonah's has followed these instructions with the dedication of someone who enjoys breathing and would like to continue. Today's session concerns mining rights in the Torven sector, which Jonah's knows nothing about, and violations of the Compact of Stars, which Jonah's is pretty sure nobody actually understands, including the people citing it. A delegate from the Heltorian Concordance is shouting at a representative from the Quiven hegemony about resource allocation. The Quiven representative responds by releasing pheromones that translate roughly as "your mother was a solar flare." Things deteriorate from there. The Council's mediator, a gaseous being named Eshril whose species achieved sentience around the time Earth was still sorting out multicellular life, attempts to restore order. Fails, tries again. Fails harder. Someone throws something that might be either a ceremonial weapon or an elaborate insult. Jonah's makes a note in his datapad. Session 847, still no idea what anyone is talking about. Recommend humanity continue pretending to understand. Then she enters. The chamber doesn't quiet so much as have its sound surgically removed. Every conversation dies mid-syllable. Every gesture freezes. Even the translator systems seem to hold their breath, uncertain whether broadcasting what comes next might constitute a security risk. Empress Caltha Vren of the Vrexian Dominion doesn't walk into rooms, she conquers them. Her skin shifts between deep purple and midnight black like a bruise healing in reverse, patterns flowing across her frame in ways that suggest either advanced biology or really committed mood lighting. She stands 9 feet tall, which Jonah's knows because he looked it up after the first time he saw her, and needed to confirm he wasn't hallucinating. Her eyes are molten gold, the kind of gold that doesn't just reflect light but judges it and finds it wanting. She wears armor that looks like it was grown rather than forged, all flowing curves and sharp edges that shouldn't coexist but do anyway out of fear of disappointing her. Her guards flank her in perfect formation, 8 warriors who could individually conquer a small moon and have probably done exactly that during their lunch breaks. Caltha Vren commands 17 star systems. Her fleet once held off 3 coalition forces simultaneously while negotiating a trade agreement with a 4th. There are species who pray to deities less terrifying than her. Jonah's has successfully avoided her attention for 4 councils straight, which he considers his greatest diplomatic achievement. The mediator attempts a greeting that comes out as a wheeze. Caltha ignores it. She surveys the council chamber with the expression of someone deciding which insect deserves to be stepped on first. The delegates who moments ago were ready to commit assault over mining rights now sit perfectly still, employing the universal survival strategy of maybe, if I don't move, the apex predator won't notice me. The Heltorian delegate tries to resume his argument, gets 3 words in before Caltha's gaze swings toward him. He stops talking so abruptly Jonah's hears his translator implant short out. "This council," Caltha says, her voice carrying across the chamber without amplification, "has devolved into children squabbling over toys. I have conquered systems with more dignity than you display over rock and gas." The mediator makes a sound like a balloon deflating. "Empress Vren, with all due respect to your position, Then show it, Kaltha interrupts, by restoring order or stepping aside for someone who can. Several delegates who have been around long enough to know better wisely avoid eye contact. The newer ones, still operating under the delusion that the council runs on parliamentary procedure rather than elaborate threat displays, look confused. Jonas makes another note. Empress Vren can silence a chamber of several hundred beings with 3 sentences. Recommend humanity avoid annoying her. The Quivan representative, apparently possessing more courage than survival instinct, rises from his seat. The Vrexian Dominion may command respect through force, but this council operates on principles of, he doesn't finish. Kaltha's hand moves, not threateningly, just enough to suggest that finishing might be inadvisable. The representative sits. Jonas mentally upgrades his survival estimate for the Quivan species. Then something shifts. Kaltha's posture changes, tension bleeding into alertness. Her golden eyes scan the chamber methodically, moving across sections with predatory precision. Jonas watches her gaze travel through rows of delegates, ancient species, powerful warlords, beings who have negotiated treaties older than human civilization. Her eyes lock onto section 742, onto the cheap seats, onto Jonah's web, who is very suddenly aware that his heart has opinions about this development, and those opinions involve panic. The entire council follows her gaze. Hundreds of beings turning to look at the human in the back row, the one who's successfully avoided notice for 4 sessions, who represents a species most of them still mispronounce. Kaltha's arm extends. One long finger points across the vast chamber, across rows of dignitaries and warlords and ancient beings whose species mastered interstellar travel before humanity invented the wheel. Points directly at Jonas, who has stopped breathing because breathing requires voluntary muscle control, and his voluntary muscles have filed for early retirement. Her voice carries like thunder deciding to be conversational. That one belongs to me. The silence that follows isn't just quiet. It's the sound of several hundred political calculations happening simultaneously, of treaties being mentally rewritten, of power dynamics shifting with tectonic force. Jonas sits frozen, still holding his datapad, still sitting in the 3-buttock chair designed for someone else, while the galaxy's most feared empress claims him like he's a library book she's checking out. Ambassador Victoria Chen, Earth's senior diplomat, rises from her seat 3 rows ahead. She's a career professional who's negotiated first contact protocols with 17 species and maintained her composure through all of them. Right now, she looks like composure has left the building and taken sanity with it. Empress Vren, Chen says, her voice admirably steady, I must request clarification. Are you claiming jurisdiction over human delegate web? Because Earth's sovereignty. I claim nothing that concerns your fragile political structures, Kaltha interrupts. The human belongs to me. This is not negotiable. Chen tries again in Vrexian formal dialect, stumbles over a grammatical construction that probably just propositioned someone's ancestor and switches back to standard. On what basis? On the basis that I said so. The mediator attempts intervention. Perhaps if we could establish the nature of this claim. The nature, Kaltha says, is that this human is under my protection. Any who wish to dispute this may do so. Once. 3 species simultaneously recheck their military readiness ratings against the Vrexian Dominion. All 3 quietly decide that disputing sounds like an excellent way to become a cautionary tale. Jonas finally remembers how breathing works, manages to raise his hand like he's in school, realizes how absurd that looks, lowers it, raises it again because what else is he supposed to do? Excuse me. Hi, quick question. What? Several delegates make sounds that their translators render as various forms of "oh stars." The human is speaking. Kaltha's expression doesn't change, but something in her eyes might be amusement. Might also be the look a cat gives a particularly interesting mouse. Stand, she commands. Jonas stands. The chair, freed from the burden of supporting two buttocks in a three-buttock design, makes a relieved sound. His legs are working on borrowed confidence and fading adrenaline. Approach. The council chamber is designed for species of widely varying sizes, which means the path to the central floor involves stairs, ramps, and what Jonas is pretty sure is an escalator built for beings made of sentient light. He navigates all of them while several hundred of the galaxy's most powerful entities watch. His shoes squeak on the polished floor. The sound echoes. He will remember that squeak in his nightmares. The floor is massive, designed to accommodate delegations and disputes, and apparently impromptu claims of humans by terrifying empresses. Jonas crosses it, each step watched by beings who could vaporize him with a thought, until he stands before Caltha Vren's platform. Up close, she's even more intimidating, which Jonas hadn't thought geometrically possible. She doesn't speak immediately, just looks at him with those molten gold eyes, expression unreadable. Jonas has stared down boardroom executives and military commanders, and one particularly aggressive raccoon outside his apartment. None of them prepared him for this. Finally, Caltha addresses the council. 3 years ago, this human's vessel intercepted a distress signal in the Korath belt. Jonas's stomach drops. Oh no, she's talking about that. Pirates had ambushed an expedition, my daughter's expedition. Her voice carries weight that has nothing to do with volume. The human ship was a cargo runner, built for transport, not combat, crew of 30, no military training. Jonas remembers that day with painful clarity. The distress call crackling through static, his pilot arguing they should report it and move on. Jonas overriding him because the voice in the transmission sounded young and scared, and he was apparently the kind of idiot who makes terrible decisions quickly. He engaged anyway, Caltha continues. Drew fire from vessels that outgunned him 50-1. His ship, criminally underarmed, laughably fragile, took hits meant for my daughter's shields, bought her time to regenerate defenses. Lost half his crew doing it. The chamber is absolutely silent. Chen has her head in her hands. Jonas can practically hear her thinking this is not in the manual. When my forces arrived, Caltha says, I found him unconscious in a ship held together by emergency sealant and what I believe humans call hope. His first words upon waking were not "Am I safe?" or "Will I be compensated?" They were, "Is the girl alive?" Jonas wants to clarify that he'd been concussed and possibly delirious, but his mouth has stopped accepting commands. Caltha's gaze returns to him. He saved my daughter's life, asked for nothing, expected nothing. When I offered payment, he requested only that my engineers help repair his ship and that I ensure his crew's families were compensated for those who died. He refused personal reward. I didn't refuse, Jonas hears himself say. I just thought the families deserved it more. Also, I was on a lot of pain medication. My decision-making was impaired. Something ripples across Caltha's face that might be the Vrexian equivalent of a smile. Your decision-making bought my daughter time to survive. That makes it the best decision anyone made that day. She turns back to the council. This is why I claim him, not as property, not as conquest. By Vrexian law, I adopt him into my clan. He is under my protection. Any who harm him harm me. Any who honor him honor my house. She pauses. Any who wish to dispute this may approach. No one approaches. The Heltorian delegate who'd been so argumentative earlier is suddenly fascinated by his datapad. The Quivan representative has developed an urgent need to study the ceiling. Ambassador Chen manages to stand. Empress, with all respect, this is unprecedented. Earth will need to consult. Then consult, Caltha says. The claim stands regardless. Jonas stands there, still slightly squeaking with each movement, while the galaxy's political order rearranges itself around him. He's pretty sure this violates at least 17 provisions of his employment contract, possibly also several laws of physics, though he's less clear on those. Can I just say, he offers to no one in particular, that I feel like there should have been some kind of preliminary meeting about this. Maybe a memo. Caltha's guards, 8 feet of crystalline armor and concentrated violence, make sounds their translators render as various forms of amusement. The Empress herself regards Jonas with an expression that might be approval. No, she says simply. There are no memos for family. Jonas Webb, cargo runner turned diplomat turned apparently adopted son of the galaxy's most feared empress, stands in the center of the Galactic Council and realizes his life has just become infinitely more complicated. Also, his shoes are still squeaking. Also, he's pretty sure Ambassador Chen is going to kill him. Also, and this is the part he's having trouble processing, Caltha Vren just called him family. The galaxy, for its part, begins the difficult process of recalculating every assumption it had about humanity's place in the cosmic order. It's going to be a long session. The council adjourns in what Eshril, the mediator, diplomatically calls unprecedented procedural complexity, and what everyone else recognizes as barely contained chaos. Delegates huddle in clusters, translators working overtime to process conversations happening in 17 languages simultaneously. The Quivan representative is arguing with someone from the Seric Concordat. The Heltorians have formed a defensive semicircle and are emitting pheromones that translate as, "We need to discuss this internally for the next decade." Jonas stands near the central platform, still processing the last 2 hours, when Ambassador Chen materializes at his elbow with the intensity of someone whose carefully constructed diplomatic career just got hit by a meteor named Vrexian adoption. "My office," she says. "Now, is that an order or a strongly worded suggestion? Webb, I once negotiated a trade agreement with the Zinthri Collective while they were actively trying to eat me. Don't test my patience." Jonas follows her through corridors designed for species ranging from gaseous to gelatinous, past delegates who stop mid-conversation to stare at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation. Someone from a species he doesn't recognize makes a gesture that his translator unhelpfully renders as untranslatable, possibly religious significance or elaborate insult. Chen's office is technically a diplomatic suite, which means it's slightly larger than a storage closet and features furniture that almost accommodates human physiology. She closes the door, activates a privacy field that hums with what Jonas hopes is routine security and not preventing screaming from escaping, and turns to face him. "Explain." "I would love to," Jonas says honestly. "But I'm approximately as confused as you are, just with more direct involvement." Chen sits heavily in a chair that was definitely designed for someone with a tail. "The Koreth Belt incident, 3 years ago, that was you." "Technically, yes, though incident feels generous. Catastrophic lapse in judgment resulting in explosive decompression is more accurate. You engaged pirates to save a Vrexian princess." "I engaged pirates because someone was sending a distress call, and I apparently have no survival instinct. I didn't know she was a princess until after, when I woke up in a medical bay, and someone explained that I'd accidentally become an interstellar incident." Chen pulls up a file that makes her datapad struggle. "According to Vrexian records, which they've now made public, thank you for that, you lost 18 crew members. Your ship was destroyed. You spent 3 weeks in intensive care." She looks up. "The official report says you refused compensation. The families of the crew deserved it more. I was just the idiot who gave the order." That idiot just got claimed by Empress Caltha Vren in front of the entire Galactic Council. Chen rubs her temples like she's trying to physically massage away the diplomatic nightmare. "Do you understand what this means? She's adopted you into her clan. By Vrexian law, you're now, effectively, her son. You have her protection, her resources, her political weight behind you." Jonas sits on something that might be a chair or might be decorative. It's hard to tell. "Is that good? It's unprecedented. No Vrexian empress has ever adopted an alien into her clan. Most species would consider it impossible. The political implications." She stops, recalculates. Earth just went from recent addition to the Council to aligned with the Vrexian Dominion. 3 empires are going to assume we orchestrated this. 4 more will think we're puppets, and at least 2 are going to see this as a threat. To be clear, I did not orchestrate this. My primary skill is filing reports and making coffee that doesn't violate sentience laws. Your primary skill, apparently, is making decisions that reshape galactic politics. Chen's datapad chimes. She glances at it and her expression goes carefully neutral. You've been assigned quarters in the Vrexian wing. I'm sorry, the what? Kaltha's delegation has requested you be moved to their section for security and familial proximity. The council granted it. She looks at Jonas with something that might be sympathy. You're not a prisoner, but you're also not exactly free to just leave. Politically, you're now a very valuable chess piece. I don't want to be a chess piece. I want to file reports and occasionally say, noted, in meetings. Then, you shouldn't have saved a princess. Jonas's new quarters make his previous apartment look like a janitor's closet that gave up. The room is massive, designed for beings who consider cozy to be 30 feet of vertical clearance. The bed is large enough to land a small shuttle on. The gravity has been adjusted to Vrexian standard, which makes Jonas feel like he's walking through invisible syrup. 2 guards stand outside his door. Not human guards. Vrexian warriors, each 8 feet of crystalline armor and what Jonas's briefing materials diplomatically called advanced combat capability, and what he mentally translates as could rip me apart with their thoughts. Am I a prisoner? He asks them. No, delegate, one responds. Their translator gives them a voice like grinding rocks that learn to be polite. We are honor guard your protection. From what? Threats. What threats? All of them. Jonas decides not to pursue this line of questioning. He enters his quarters, tries to figure out how the door works, eventually just walks through it and hopes for the best. The room contains furniture that looks like it was grown rather than built. A viewport shows Axion Prime's exterior, stars wheeling past in patient rotation. Something that might be a bathtub or might be a small swimming pool occupies one corner. He's attempting to determine whether the bed is alive when someone knocks. The sound is perfectly calibrated, not aggressive, not apologetic, just the audio equivalent of "you will answer this door." Kaltha Vren stands in his doorway. She's changed from her formal armor into something that still looks like it could stop small arms fire, but with fewer ceremonial spikes. Her guards flank her but remain in the corridor, giving the impression of privacy while making it clear that privacy is a gift she's granting. May I enter? She asks it like a courtesy, but Jonas has the distinct impression that no isn't actually an option. Sure, yes, please. This is apparently your space station anyway. She enters, and the room somehow feels smaller despite her being a fraction of its volume. She doesn't sit, just stands there looking at him with those golden eyes that seem to see through skin and bone into the part of him that makes terrible decisions. You're uncomfortable, she observes. I'm a cargo runner pretending to be a diplomat who just got adopted by an empress in front of several hundred civilizations. Uncomfortable feels like understatement. Something that might be amusement flickers across her face. You keep calling yourself a cargo runner. You were captain of that vessel. Captain of a ship that hauled agricultural supplies and occasionally smuggled liquor when port authorities weren't paying attention. Not exactly military command. Yet you gave orders that saved my daughter's life. She moves to the viewport, her reflection ghosting across the stars. Do you remember her? Jonas does. Zira. Young by Vrexian standards. Maybe equivalent to a human teenager, though she'd commanded that expedition with more authority than Jonas had managed in his entire career. Her ship had been surrounded, shields failing, when he put his cargo runner between her and the pirates. Not because he'd calculated odds, because her distress call had sounded scared and young, and he'd apparently been raised to make stupid, heroic choices. I remember pulling her ship out of a debris field while mine screamed about structural integrity. She thanked me afterward, called me brave fool in standard. I took it as a compliment. It was. In Vrexian culture, acknowledging foolish bravery is high praise. Caltha turns from the viewport. She survived because you didn't calculate, didn't weigh political costs or strategic value. You saw someone in danger and responded. Most species here today would have run probability assessments first. Probably would have been smarter. Probably. But my daughter would be dead. Her voice carries weight that has nothing to do with volume. That's why I claimed you today. Not because you're strategically valuable. Not because I want leverage over Earth. Because you did something most beings in that council chamber would consider irrational. You helped without asking what you'd gain. Jonas sits on the bed. It is definitely alive, adjusting to his weight with what feels like concern. You could have just sent a thank you card. I could have, but you don't understand what you did. Caltha moves closer, and Jonas notices for the first time that her skin patterns aren't random. They're language, constantly shifting, telling stories he can't read. In Vrexian culture, saving a clan member's life creates a debt. Not financial, spiritual. When you saved Zira, you became part of my clan whether I acknowledged it or not. Today, I simply made it official. By announcing it in front of the entire galaxy. By ensuring everyone knows you're under my protection. Her expression hardens. There are factions here who would use you as leverage against Earth. Others who would eliminate you to prevent Vrexian-human cooperation. My claim makes that impossible. Harming you now means declaring war on my dominion. So I'm protected, yes. And also bait. Also yes. She doesn't apologize for it. Politics is violence with better vocabulary. You're valuable now, which makes you a target. But you're also mine, which makes targeting you fatal. Jonas processes this. Tries to decide if he should feel grateful or terrified. Settles on both. Ambassador Chen thinks this is going to cause a political crisis. Ambassador Chen is correct. 3 empires have already lodged formal complaints. 2 are threatening to withdraw from the council. And someone, I don't yet know who, has put a price on your life. I'm sorry, what? A contract, issued approximately 2 hours ago. Significant sum. Whoever wants you gone is well-funded and politically connected. She says it like she's discussing weather. My intelligence services are investigating. Until they identify the source, you'll remain under guard. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest concern was whether the coffee machine would be fixed. Now someone wants me dead because I accidentally became politically significant. Welcome to galactic politics, Caltha says. It's worse than your coffee machine. At least that only threatens you with bad beverages. Jonas laughs. It comes out slightly hysterical. Caltha watches him with an expression that might be concern or might be curiosity about whether humans break entertainingly. Your daughter, Jonas says when he can breathe again. Zira, is she here? She's commanding a patrol in the outer sectors, but I've sent word she'll want to see you. Caltha moves toward the door, then pauses. You could refuse this. The claim, publicly deny it. Return to your quiet life filing reports. Could I actually do that, or are you just being polite? You could. It would cause significant political complications, but it's your choice. She meets his eyes. However, the contract on your life would remain, and without my protection, you'd be significantly easier to kill. So my options are: accept being adopted by you, and become a political target with bodyguards, or refuse, and become a political target without bodyguards. Essentially, those are terrible options. Yes, Caltha agrees. But one of them comes with better accommodations and the possibility of survival. She leaves, her guards falling into formation behind her. Jonas sits on his possibly sentient bed in his absurdly large quarters and stares at the stars wheeling past. Somewhere out there, someone wants him dead. Somewhere else, humanity is probably having a collective panic attack about their delegate being claimed by the galaxy's most feared empress. And somewhere in the outer sectors, a Vrexian princess named Zira is receiving word that the brave fool who saved her life is now, technically, her adopted brother. Jonas's datapad chimes. A message from Chen. Emergency meeting. All human delegation. Bring whatever dignity you have left. He looks at the message, looks at the stars, thinks about the fact that 3 years ago he'd intercepted a distress call because it was the right thing to do, and now that decision has reshaped his entire existence. His shoes still squeak when he walks. Some things, at least, remain consistent. He heads to the meeting, flanked by 8-foot guards, carrying nothing but a datapad and the growing suspicion that his life has become a space opera without his consent. The galaxy, for its part, continues recalculating. The second council session opens with what Eshril diplomatically calls heightened security protocols, and what everyone recognizes as, we're one insult away from open warfare. Delegates enter through scanners designed to detect weapons, poisons, hostile intentions, and what the security briefing mysteriously labels conceptual threats. Jonas passes through all of them while guards watch with the intensity of people expecting him to spontaneously explode. He's assigned a seat on the main floor now, not in the nosebleed section where he'd spent 4 comfortable, anonymous councils. The chair is designed for beings with spines that bend in directions human spines were never meant to consider. Ambassador Chen sits 2 seats over, radiating the energy of someone who hasn't slept and has been having extensive conversations with Earth's government that probably involved phrases like interstellar incident and career-ending disaster. Kaltha's delegation occupies the section directly across from him. The Empress sits on her throne, because of course it's a throne, regular chairs being apparently beneath her station, surrounded by advisors and warriors who look like they eat starships for breakfast. She doesn't acknowledge Jonas directly, but he catches her watching him with an expression that might be protective or might be the way a chess player watches a particularly important pawn. The mediator calls the session to order with the enthusiasm of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else. We continue discussions regarding resource allocation in the Torvend sector, as well as addressing recent developments in diplomatic protocols. Recent developments is apparently code for yesterday the Vrexian Empress adopted a human and we're all still processing. Several delegates shift uncomfortably. The Heltorian who'd been so vocal last session is conspicuously quiet, suddenly fascinated by his datapad settings menu. A representative from the Seric Concordat rises. He's tall, crystalline, and his species communicates partly through color shifts that Jonas's translator struggles to parse. Before we continue standard proceedings, I believe the Council deserves clarification regarding Empress Vren's unprecedented claim. There is nothing to clarify, Kaltha says without standing. The matter is settled. With respect, Empress, the implications affect multiple treaty frameworks. If the Vrexian Dominion is now formally aligned with Earth. We are not aligned, Kaltha interrupts. I have adopted one human into my clan. This does not constitute a military or economic alliance between our peoples. It is a personal matter. A personal matter announced before the entire Galactic Council, the Seric delegate counters. His crystalline surface shifts through colors Jonas's translator renders as skeptical diplomacy. One that grants a member of an observer species access to Vrexian resources and protection typically reserved for family, Kaltha finishes. Which he is. Do you wish to dispute the right of a sovereign ruler to choose her clan? The delegate's colors shift rapidly. Jonas's translator gives up and just displays complex emotional state, possibly frustration mixed with survival instinct. No dispute intended, Empress, merely seeking understanding of how this affects existing protocols. It affects them minimally, Kaltha says, unless you intend to harm him. Then it affects them significantly. The chamber goes quiet in that particular way that means everyone's doing threat calculations. The Sarek delegate sits slowly, his colors settling into what Jonas's translator suggests means tactical retreat. Eshril attempts to redirect. Perhaps we could return to the matter of Torvin sector mining rights. I have a question, someone says. It takes Jonas a moment to realize the voice came from him. Several hundred beings turn to stare. Ambassador Chen makes a sound like a tea kettle achieving consciousness. Kaltha's expression doesn't change, but something in her posture suggests either approval or curiosity about what disaster is about to unfold. Human delegate Webb, Eshril says with the tone of someone watching a moon fall toward a planet and being powerless to stop it. You wish to address the council. I just think it's weird that we're arguing about whether I'm strategically significant when, literally yesterday, I was filing reports about grain shipments. Like if I'm suddenly important enough to cause political crises, shouldn't someone have mentioned that earlier? Maybe during orientation. Several species make sound their translators struggle with. The Quivan representative's pheromone release translates as, "Is the human having a breakdown or is this strategy?" Mr. Webb, Ambassador Chen says quietly, urgently, "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No, I think he has a point," says a delegate from the Kithrin Assembly. A species whose resemblance to 6-foot-tall praying mantises makes Jonas deeply uncomfortable. We're treating this human as a political chess piece while he sits among us. Perhaps we should ask what he wants. "What I want," Jonas says, because apparently his mouth has decided to operate independently of his survival instinct, is for everyone to stop acting like I'm some kind of strategic asset. 3 years ago, I pulled someone out of a combat zone because it seemed like the thing to do. That's it. No grand strategy, no political calculation, just a cargo runner making bad decisions quickly. Bad decisions that saved my daughter's life, Kaltha says. She stands now, and the chamber's attention shifts to her like gravity reasserting itself. Bad decisions that most of you would call heroic if they'd been made by your own species. But because a human made them, you question motive, seek hidden agenda, assume complexity where there was only compassion. The Sarek delegate's colors shift again. Empress, no one questions the human's actions. We question the implications. You question whether humanity deserves recognition, Kaltha says flatly. Whether a young species that's barely mastered fold space travel has earned a place among elder civilizations. You saw my claim as proof of human scheming rather than Vrexian gratitude. She moves down from her platform, each step deliberate. So let me clarify. I claim Jonah's Webb because he possesses something most of you have forgotten, the instinct to help before calculating benefit. And if that makes him strategically valuable, perhaps you should examine why compassion has become rare enough to be remarkable. The silence that follows is the kind that precedes either violence or epiphany. Jonas isn't sure which is more likely and isn't sure which is preferable. Then the Sarek delegate does something unexpected. He stands again, his crystalline structure shifting through a complex pattern Jonas's translator labels as formal acknowledgement of valid point, with undertones of embarrassed agreement. The Empress speaks with uncomfortable accuracy, he says. The Concordat withdraws its concerns. Other delegates begin murmuring. The Heltorians release pheromones that suggest grudging respect. A representative from a species Jonas doesn't recognize makes a gesture that might be approval or might be a sneeze. It's honestly hard to tell. Eshril looks like someone whose worst-case scenario just inverted into a best-case scenario, and they're not sure how to process it. Then perhaps we can move forward with. The explosion is small, professional, designed not to destroy the chamber but to kill one specific target. Jonas sees the flash before he hears the sound, his brain processing, that's a weapon discharge, half a second before his body decides on falling sideways as its preferred survival strategy. Something impacts his chair with enough force to vaporize the section where his head was. He hits the floor, actual floor, not the anti-gravity cushioning most species get, and rolls, years of cargo hold accidents giving him reflexes that diplomatic training never covers. Someone is screaming. Multiple someones. His translator is trying to process 17 languages of panic simultaneously and producing an audio experience like cats fighting in a synthesizer. Through the chaos, Jonas sees the shooter. The Sarek delegate who'd just withdrawn his concerns, his crystalline form now glowing with energy that shouldn't be possible after passing security. In his hand, if hand is the right word for the manipulator, appendage is a weapon that looks like it was grown rather than manufactured. The delegate is lining up another shot when something massive moves with impossible speed. Caltha crosses the distance between her platform and the Sarek delegate in less time than it takes Jonas to process that she's moving. Her arm, just her arm, nothing else, extends and intercepts the blast. The energy hits her skin and simply stops. Doesn't dissipate, doesn't reflect, just absorbs into the shifting patterns across her form like water into sand. She redirects it with a gesture, sending the blast back toward its source with what Jonas can only describe as casual contempt. The Sarek delegate tumbles backward into 3 rows of seats. His weapon clatters across the floor, leaking energy that makes Jonas's teeth ache. Caltha's guards are moving now, securing the shooter, scanning for additional threats, forming a protective barrier around their empress that coincidentally also protects Jonas because he's still on the floor approximately 3 feet from her. Caltha looks down at him. "Are you harmed?" Jonas takes inventory. His shoulder hurts where he hit the floor. His dignity is thoroughly destroyed. His suit has acquired a tear that's definitely going to show up in official photos. "I'm okay." Mostly surprised and possibly traumatized. Is traumatized an option? Yes. She offers her hand. It's easily twice the size of his, and when he takes it, she pulls him upright with enough ease that he feels like a child being helped up after a fall, which, given their relative sizes and power levels, isn't far from accurate. The chamber is pandemonium. Delegates shouting in languages that make Jonas's translator emit sounds like dial-up internet achieving consciousness. Security forces flooding in from every entrance. Medical teams rushing toward the Sarek delegate, who's not moving and might not ever move again, given the smoking crater where his thorax used to be. Ambassador Chen materializes at Jonas's elbow, her diplomatic composure completely abandoned in favor of raw maternal panic. "Are you hurt? Did it hit you? Do you need medical?" "I'm fine," Jonas manages. He gestures at Caltha. She stopped it. Chen looks at the Vrexian Empress, who's standing over the fallen delegate with an expression that suggests she's disappointed the threat ended so quickly. "Thank you," Chen says, and Jonas has never heard her sound so sincere. "Thank you for protecting him." "He is family," Caltha says simply. "This is not negotiable." Eshril is attempting to restore order, failing, trying again with different vocabulary. Jonas's guards, his guards, when did he get guards, form a protective detail around him. Crystalline armor gleaming with threat assessment protocols that are probably judging everyone in the chamber for their potential to commit violence. Someone from the Council's security force approaches Caltha. "Empress, preliminary scan suggests the weapon was biological, grown from the delegate's own mass. It would have been undetectable by conventional screening." "Then your conventional screening requires improvement," Caltha says. She hasn't moved from her position between Jonas and the rest of the chamber. "Detain anyone who had contact with the Sarek delegation. I want to know how this was planned and who authorized it." "Empress, with respect, we don't have jurisdiction to." "You do now. Or you can explain to the council why you allowed an assassination attempt during an official session." She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't need to, choose quickly. The security officer chooses the option that doesn't involve explaining failures to an angry empress. Smart choice, Jonas thinks. The chamber is being evacuated in controlled chaos. Delegates filing out under heavy guard, murmuring in languages that Jonas's translator gives up trying to parse. He catches fragments. Unprecedented breach. Vrexian response. The human survived. Ambassador Chen is talking rapidly into a communication device, presumably updating Earth's government that their delegate almost died but didn't, which is probably going to require extensive paperwork and possibly therapy. For everyone involved, Caltha's guards escort Jonas toward an exit, the Empress walking beside him like a living shield. They pass the fallen Sarek delegate, being loaded onto a medical platform by beings wearing armor that suggests they expect him to spontaneously reanimate and resume violence. Was he working alone? Jonas asks. Unknown, Caltha says, but unlikely. Biological weapons require resources and planning. Someone funded this. Someone with access to Council security protocols. Someone who really doesn't want humanity, and the Vrexian Dominion being friendly. Yes, they reach a secure corridor, guards posted every 20 feet, surveillance systems so dense Jonas can practically feel them analyzing his biometrics. Caltha stops, turns to face him fully. This will not be the last attempt, she says, not warning, just fact. You've become valuable, a symbol of cooperation between our peoples. There are factions who would rather see that cooperation fail violently than succeed quietly. So what do I do? Hide, go back to Earth and pretend this never happened. You could, but the contract on your life doesn't expire simply because you leave, and your planet lacks the resources to protect you from threats that can infiltrate the Galactic Council itself. She pauses. Or you remain under my protection, except that you're now part of something larger than cargo routes and grain shipments. Jonas looks at her. At this being who conquered star systems and commands fleets, and just absorbed a weapons blast meant to kill him like it was a mild inconvenience. Who's offering him protection, family, a place in galactic politics he never wanted and definitely doesn't feel qualified for. Can I at least get a weapons tutorial? He asks. Because if people are going to keep trying to kill me, I'd like to at least know which end of the gun is dangerous. Something that might be a smile crosses Caltha's face. That can be arranged. And better shoes, these ones squeak. It's embarrassing during assassination attempts. I'll have my logistics officers address it. And maybe therapy. Do Vrexians do therapy? Because I think I need therapy. We have combat counselors. That's probably close enough. They continue down the corridor. Jonas flanked by guards who could individually bench press a shuttle, protected by an empress who just adopted him in the most dramatic family reunion the galaxy has ever witnessed. His datapad chimes, a message from someone whose ID is just a string of numbers. You survived. Impressive. Offer increased. Next attempt will be more creative. Jonas shows it to Caltha. She reads it, her skin patterns shifting through colors that his translator suggests mean various forms of anticipated violence. Good, she says. I prefer challenges. Jonas Webb, cargo runner turned diplomat turned political target turned adopted son of the galaxy's most dangerous empress, follows her toward whatever secure location she's chosen for him, and tries to remember when his life became a space opera without his consent. His shoes still squeak. At least that's consistent. The secure bunker, because apparently Jonas's life now includes the phrase secure bunker, is located in Axion Prime's inner ring, protected by shields that could stop a small fleet and guards who look like they eat small fleets for breakfast. The room is designed for emergency council sessions, which means it's simultaneously heavily fortified and diplomatically neutral, with furniture that accommodates approximately 40 different body types and lighting that doesn't give any one species-specific migraines. Jonas sits in a chair that's only mildly uncomfortable, which counts as luxury given the day he's had. His shoulder aches where he hit the floor. His suit is ruined. His datapad keeps chiming with messages from Earth's government that he's ignoring because he's pretty sure they're all variations of what the hell is happening. Ambassador Chen paces, which in the low-gravity section means she occasionally drifts upward and has to grab handholds. 3 factions have claimed responsibility for the assassination attempt. 2 of them are historically opposed to each other. One doesn't actually exist according to council records. So we have no idea who's actually responsible, Jonas says. Correct, but Caltha's intelligence services are investigating. Chen stops pacing, anchors herself to a handhold. The Sarek Concordat is in chaos. They claim the delegate acted alone, that he was radicalized by extremist elements. They're offering full cooperation with the investigation and apologizing profusely. They're scared of Caltha. Everyone's scared of Caltha. She just absorbed a directed energy weapon and returned it with enough force to vaporize the shooter. There are species with entire militaries who can't do that. Chen looks at Jonas. You realize what this means, don't you? You're not just politically valuable anymore. You're the human under Empress Vren's personal protection, the one she physically shielded from assassination. That changes everything. Changes it how? It proves she meant what she said. That you're family, not political convenience. Empresses don't take weapons blasts for strategic assets, Jonas. They take them for people they care about. Jonas processes this, tries to fit it into his worldview where 3 weeks ago his biggest concern was coffee machine maintenance. Fails. So what happens now? Now Earth has to decide whether to leverage this connection or distance ourselves from it. The Council has to determine whether assassination attempts during sessions are now acceptable political strategy. And you have to decide whether you're willing to be the symbol of human-Vrexian cooperation, or whether you want to try returning to normal life. Can I return to normal life? Honestly, probably not. The contract on your life is still active. Someone, we don't know who, wants you dead badly enough to fund multiple attempts, and without Vrexian protection. Chen doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. The door opens with security protocols that probably violate 3 dimensions. Caltha enters, flanked by advisors who look like they've been having intense conversations in languages Jonas doesn't speak. She's changed armor again. This version looks more practical, less ceremonial, designed for someone expecting violence rather than pageantry. The investigation has produced preliminary results, she says without preamble. The Sarek delegate was compromised 3 days ago. Biological weapon implanted during what appeared to be a routine medical procedure. He likely didn't know he was carrying it until it activated. So he was a patsy, Jonas says. Essentially, the real threat is whoever authorized the implantation. Someone with access to Sarek medical facilities and advanced biotechnology. Caltha's expression hardens, and significant funding. The weapon was sophisticated, military grade, not something terrorists acquire easily. You think it's a government, Chen says. I think it's multiple governments working together, which is problematic, as it suggests a coalition specifically opposed to human-Vrexian cooperation. She looks at Jonas. You've become a symbol. Symbols either unite people or make them targets. You're experiencing both simultaneously. Lucky me. One of Caltha's advisors, a Vrexian whose armor suggests high rank and whose expression suggests perpetual disapproval, speaks in their own language. Jonas's translator catches up. The logical solution is to eliminate the symbol, remove the human from public view. Let the political complications die quietly. No, Caltha says flatly. Empress, with respect, his presence creates risk. His presence creates opportunity. For the first time in centuries, species are questioning their assumptions about newcomers, about whether military might is the only currency worth respecting. She turns to Jonas. You saved my daughter not because it was strategic but because it was right. That resonates. That matters. Hiding you now would suggest we're ashamed of that. That compassion should be concealed when it becomes inconvenient. The advisor makes a sound like crystalline disapproval but doesn't argue further. Chen's datapad chimes. She reads it, her expression shifting through several emotions before settling on resigned concern. Earth's government has issued a formal statement. We're supportive of cultural exchange between species, open to exploring diplomatic opportunities with the Vrexian Dominion, committed to Delegate Webb's safety and well-being. Translation, Jonas asks. Translation, they have no idea what to do but they're trying to sound confident about it. Chen looks at Caltha. Empress, Earth appreciates your protection of our delegate. But we need to understand the long-term implications. If Jonas remains under your clan's protection, then humanity has an ally, Caltha finishes. Not a master, not a conqueror. An ally who respects your sovereignty and expects you to respect ours. The boy saved my daughter. I've adopted him into my clan. These facts don't change based on political convenience. And if other species see this as Earth having unfair advantages, then they should consider making decisions that earn similar respect. Caltha's tone suggests the conversation is approaching its end. I don't adopt species into my clan. I adopted one human who demonstrated qualities worth honoring. If others wish to earn similar recognition, they're welcome to try. Jonas's datapad chimes again. Another message from the mysterious number. Axion Prime is large. Security can't cover everything. Enjoy your borrowed time. He shows it to Caltha. She reads it, her skin patterns shifting into configurations his translator labels as anticipated predation. Good, she says. Let them try again. Each attempt provides more data, more connections. Eventually they'll make a mistake, and when they do, I'll know exactly who's funding these attacks. And then, Jonas asks, and then I'll discuss the matter with them. Diplomatically. The way she says diplomatically suggests the discussion will involve significantly less talking and significantly more violence. An alarm sounds, not emergency but notification. Eshryl's voice echoes through the station's communication systems. The Galactic Council will reconvene in 6 standard hours. Security protocols have been updated. All delegates are required to submit to enhanced scanning. They're resuming the session, Chen says. After an assassination attempt, they're just continuing. The Council doesn't stop for individual violence, one of Caltha's advisors explains, particularly not when that violence failed. Pausing would suggest the attacker succeeded in disrupting proceedings. So we just pretend someone didn't try to kill Jonas. We acknowledge it happened and proceed anyway. Anything else grants the attackers power they don't deserve. The advisor looks at Jonas. You'll need to attend. Absence would be interpreted as fear. I am afraid. Someone tried to vaporize my head. Fear feels contextually appropriate. Contextually appropriate, Caltha says, and politically inadvisable. You'll attend under guard, sit in the protected section, and demonstrate that humanity doesn't collapse when challenged. Jonas looks at her, at Chen, at the advisors who are discussing his survival like it's a logistics problem rather than his entire existence. Does anyone else think it's weird that I went from filing grain reports to being a political symbol in less than a week? Yes, Chen says. Very weird, Caltha agrees. Unprecedented, adds an advisor. But also, Caltha continues, irreversible. You can't unfill reports that reshape politics, Jonas. You can only decide how you respond to what you've become. The 6 hours pass in a blur of security briefings, armor fittings, because apparently Jonas now gets armor, and a very uncomfortable conversation with Earth's president via encrypted channel that mostly involves her saying, "Try not to die," in increasingly creative ways while pretending it's diplomatic guidance. When the council reconvenes, Jonas enters flanked by 8 guards, wearing armor that makes him look like a very small tank with anxiety issues. The delegates stare, some with concern, some with calculation, a few with what might be respect or might be the look species give to prey animals that survive against odds. The chamber has been reconfigured. Additional security at every entrance. Energy barriers between delegation sections. Scanners so thorough Jonas is pretty sure they analyzed his recent meal choices and found them wanting. He takes his seat, still on the main floor, still in view of everyone, and tries to look like someone who isn't terrified. Succeeds approximately not at all. Kaltha sits across from him, her delegation arranged in protective formation. She doesn't acknowledge him directly, but he catches her watching with an expression that might be pride or might be the look a parent gives a child about to do something brave and stupid. Eshril calls the session to order. We continue our discussions with heightened awareness of security concerns. The incident from our previous session is under investigation. The Sarek Concordat has issued formal apologies. And we will now address the matter that sparked yesterday's complications. The human, someone says, a delegate from the Kithrin Assembly. Whether his presence under Vrexian protection represents a treaty violation. It doesn't, Ambassador Chen says, standing. Earth and the Vrexian Dominion have no formal military or economic alliance. Empress Vren's adoption of Delegate Webb is a cultural matter, not a political one. A cultural matter that grants him access to Vrexian resources and protection, the Kithrin delegate counters. That affects council dynamics. Only if you allow it to, Kaltha says. She stands slowly, and the chamber quiets like someone turned down the universe's volume. You're afraid, not of the human, of what he represents. That power isn't the only currency worth respecting. That compassion can earn recognition military might never will. You see my claim as threat because it challenges your assumptions about hierarchy. The Kithrin Assembly challenges nothing, the delegate says. We merely seek clarity on whether humanity deserves a place here, Kaltha finishes. They do, not because of technology or territorial expansion, because one of them made a choice that saved my daughter when calculation would have demanded he flee. If that's not enough to earn your respect, then respect is worthless. The chamber erupts, arguments in 17 languages, pheromones suggesting every emotion from agreement to rage. Someone from a species Jonas doesn't recognize makes a sound like a piccolo having an existential crisis. And through it all, Jonas sits in his uncomfortable armor, flanked by guards, watching the galaxy argue about whether he deserves to exist in this space. Then something unexpected happens. The Heltorian delegate stands. The one who'd been so vocal at the first session, so quiet after Kaltha's claim. He releases pheromones that Jonas's translator renders as formal address with undertones of embarrassed sincerity. The Heltorian concordance acknowledges Empress Vren's point. We have been. He pauses, searching for words, ungenerous in our assessment of humanity. The human delegate saved a life at great cost. This demonstrates qualities we claim to value but rarely recognize in newcomers. The concordance withdraws its objections. Other delegates begin shifting. The Quivan representative speaks. The hegemony concurs. If assessment of worth is our purpose, the human has demonstrated it. One by one, species that had questioned humanity's place begin acknowledging Jonas's actions. Not all of them, not even most, but enough that the tone shifts from "should humans be here" to "humans are here and we must adapt." Kaltha catches Jonas's eye across the chamber. Doesn't smile. Vrexians don't really do smiles the way humans understand them, but something in her expression suggests satisfaction. Eshril attempts to restore order. Then perhaps we can move forward with standard council business. One moment, Jonas says, because apparently his mouth still operates independently of his survival instinct. The chamber goes quiet. Human delegate Webb, Eshril says with the tone of someone watching a moon fall and being powerless to stop it. You wish to address the council. I just want to say thank you to Empress Vren for protecting me, to the delegates who have supported humanity's presence here, and to whoever keeps trying to kill me. He pauses. Please stop. It's inconvenient and I have reports to file. Several species make sounds that their translators struggle to parse. The Kithrin delegate's mandibles do something that might be laughter. And Kaltha, Empress of the Vrexian Dominion, conqueror of star systems, makes a sound that Jonas's translator labels as amused approval with undertones of "this human will be the death of me," but at least it won't be boring. The council session continues. Jonas survives it, files his report afterward, which mostly consists of tried not to die, mostly succeeded, recommend hazard pay. 6 months later, Earth signs a formal cooperation agreement with the Vrexian Dominion. Not an alliance, both governments are careful about that, but a framework for cultural exchange and mutual support. Jonas becomes humanity's official liaison, which mostly involves attending meetings where he's wildly out of his depth and somehow not dying. Zira visits monthly, bringing her mother's gifts and terrible jokes she's learned from human entertainment broadcasts. The assassination attempts continue, 3 more over the following year, each one more creative and each one failing more spectacularly. Caltha's intelligence services eventually trace the funding to a coalition of species so opposed to change that they'd rather commit violence than adapt. The coalition collapses after Caltha discusses the matter diplomatically with their leadership. Nobody asks for details. Nobody needs to. And sometimes, when Jonas stands before the Galactic Council and speaks on behalf of humanity, he sees Caltha watching from her throne with an expression that might be pride. Might be the look a parent gives a child who's exceeded every expectation by simply being themselves. The galaxy learned something in those months after Jonas Webb saved a princess and got adopted by an empress. That worth isn't measured in weapons or territory or years of history. That sometimes the most powerful thing a species can offer is the willingness to help when helping makes no strategic sense. That humanity, young and small and wildly out of their depth, had earned their place among the stars not through conquest but through compassion. And that Jonas Webb, cargo runner turned diplomat turned symbol, had changed galactic politics by doing the simplest, most human thing possible. He'd seen someone in danger and decided to help. His shoes still squeak. The council still argues. The galaxy still turns. But somewhere in the Vrexian wing of Axion Prime, in quarters designed for beings twice his size, Jonas Webb files his reports and knows that he's exactly where he belongs. Even if he's still not sure how he got there. Even if his job description still makes no sense. Even if someone's probably going to try to kill him again next week. At least the coffee machine finally got fixed.